Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Mastering Business Growth podcast, and this is part of obviously a newish series that we're doing, which is MBG Chats. And today I'm joined by Craig McDonald from Avari. And without further ado, Craig, I think let's just go for it. Let's give us a little bit of background about who you are, what you're doing in the world right now, what problem you're solving, and go from there. And a bit of background as to how you've got to where you are now.
Sure. Well, I'm now the CEO of Avari Bikes, which is a small British high-end e-bike manufacturer, and also I'm a business partner in Form Films. And I guess just to go back a few steps, I kind of grew up in the north of England, racing BMX and a little dabble into motocross. But we used to race BMX in Rotherham. We'd go to Doncaster on the train and race there and then ride back. In fact, one of my best mates now makes competition tracks in BMX. It's something that's stayed with us our whole lives, even if with me from afar more than anything these days. But he's Phil Charnley, his name is. He's still well into it. Did a lot of traveling in my 20s, went to Hong Kong, LA, Sydney, various places. I lived in Hong Kong for 5 years, which is where I started 3D graphics, which essentially back then was just a fledgling industry. I worked for a Japanese company out there who bought me my first computer. And part of the culture in Japan or Hong Kong is that you stay until your boss leaves. Which as a Westerner doesn't really apply, but I did do anyway, just so I could teach myself 3D in the evenings, which was went on to be the basis of my career. Joined an agency, a brand agency called Landor in 2005. Worked with them until 1995. Skipped back a decade. Worked with them until 2003-4. Huge projects like FedEx, HP, Cathay Pacific. The company did a lot of big projects, and I got thrown in at the deep end in their animation team and visualization and product visualization. So loved working with those guys. And then went to Dubai in 2004. Worked on the Burj Khalifa film before it was made. And then went on from there to work on a lot of smaller films for Braun, Honda F1, lots of kind of car launches, and in particular worked with Imagination from about 2011. We launched the Range Rover Evoque, DC100, Ford Ranger, various projects like that. So in and around VFX and production the whole time, and that kind of led into my love for product and engineering, which essentially led to Avari, which I started in 2018.
Amazing. Well, I mean, if there was ever a CV, that's probably one of the better ones. I mean,
it's not planned; it just kind of happened.
Yeah,
more
but
than anything. But
these things, this is the way things go a lot of the time, and we see that quite a lot. You know, the path to entrepreneurship and the path to success is definitely not linear. A lot of it is unplanned, and it's, you know, you're not really planning your next move maybe 4 or 5 years out ever.
Yeah.
It's a case of going with how you feel, and what I'm getting out of that though, and unpacking your story a little bit there, is like, there's definitely themes of innovation, brand design, product design, manufacturing. So you've kind of been building this toolkit of skills for quite a while now.
I think what I've come to realize in life is, and this is not the same for everyone, but I can't do anything that I don't love. I've always got to be in love with it. And when CG first came out, of course, it's not commoditized now, but with AI looming and you know, a lot more people using CG. Back then it was a black art, you know, back in 1990, 2000, up to 2000, it's what you could do with it based on technology that existed at the time, and hot wiring whole offices of computers just so you could make an animation. But it's of course it's all changed now, but yeah, it's I just need to be in love with whatever I'm doing. I think it's probably where it's took me.
I think that's really key as well. I'm very much the same, and I know my business partner is as well. You know, if we're just not in love with it, like, that's And I guess people would call that passion, wouldn't they? You know, if you're not passionate about it, it's not going to see you through the shit times. You know, when things are on the low, you're going to go, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think building up an e-bike company as well it's just, you can't do that without. I mean, the amount of 4 o'clock finishes in the morning that you have to do. Essentially, when you're doing it on your own, you're bootstrapping it. We were fortunate with Avari. We had friends and family that helped us, and then we found a really good investor in 2023. Beyond that, when you start any new venture like that, you've kind of got to fill in all the gaps on your own. Myself and Jules, my business partner, we've took on every job, you know, whether it's building websites, learning how to build websites, along the same time as actually engineering the frame and coming up with solutions. So it's wearing all those hats, and you can only do it if you're passionate.
Yeah, and we've seen that quite a lot. And again, as well, you know, we've interviewed people who have like been in those jobs where they're not passionate about it and they don't last very long. You know, and you know, I've been reading a book recently called The Element by Ken Robinson, and it's, you know, it's all that kind of stuff. It's, you know, finding your element, and some people don't find it until later in life. I find that really interesting. So going on to the bike brand, looking at Avari. How long's that been running now? I'm really interested in the very, very early stages of it, like, you know, so really sort of bootstrapping that brand, or did you have, you know, did you have some savings that you kind of brought into it? Like, what was the mechanism of building Avari?
Yeah, well, I actually am also a partner in a film company, production company, with another guy called Tor Christofferson. We together run Form Films, which still to this day is, you know, is an income for us, which has been great. And during COVID, in fact, it was, you know, very good, given that during COVID, everyone took live action event budgets and stuffed them into online, which invariably there was no live action shooting, so we went out and did a lot of CG. So the reason I'm kind of telling you that is because, you know, without a second income, you just can't do these things. It's too all encompassing financially, and there are, you know, squeaky bum moments where you need to start spending large amounts of money. You can't just do everything in a vacuum on your own. You have to interface with other people, and someone needs to not design the frame, but engineer the frame for manufacture, and engineer a lot of the parts. As I say, nothing happens in a vacuum. He worked, and in fact, I worked with a guy called Paul Farrell, who's married to a really nice woman called Yawen. Taiwanese, but he's English, but they lived in Taiwan. How I got to know Paul was through AMRC in Sheffield, so the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre, and also working with CPI. Now, both of those two companies are catapult companies in the high value manufacturing kind of sector. And whereas they work with Airbus and McLaren and Rolls-Royce and all those big companies that, like the tier one companies, they also have a little bit of money set aside to work with smaller companies like ourselves. So I went up there and they gave me some great advice. CPI the same. We had some European funding to look at graphene for a while, which is a bit of a kind of, you know, sideshow and a bit of a distraction, really, because you can't, whatever you do in the UK with graphene, you can't then apply it to the Far East where ultimately you're making all the frames. So with speaking to the guys at AMRC, they put me in touch with Paul, who was in Taiwan at the time, and that became a really good, strong relationship for a number of years. And they manufacture all our frames for us, because trying to source someone in the Far East is, as you can imagine, a minefield, and you can't just open a book and say, I want to choose those guys. So traveled a lot to the Far East as well, spent a lot of time in China, spent a lot of time in Taiwan with Paul and Yawen, just going through with the engineers in the factory to get because I designed the whole bike in 3D, I should say, but then to go through it again and put another layer in with their engineers is such an intricate thing, and you have to be there. You can't do it over, you know, between person and person. It just gets watered down. You never get to the nub of it. So yeah, Avari just started like that in 2018. You kind of gather momentum, you meet more people, you have different opportunities. Some lead you down blind paths, dead ends, and some open up new relationships with different suppliers. And I think that's one of the big things is finding partners and suppliers to work with. If you don't have good suppliers and people that believe in what you're doing, you might as well just close up, because you can't do it all on your own. Some of it you can, and you have to, just to keep the cost down, but the rest of it relies on really strong companies and strong individuals in those companies to support you.
Yeah, it's a team sport, isn't it? Like you
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
can't get anywhere alone. Well, what is it they say? You can go fast alone, but together you go like further or something. I can't remember what the actual
Yeah,
saying is, but
sounds about right.
yeah, it's something about going far, that kind of thing. It doesn't really recall. So the actual bike itself then, like who is that for the everyday, or is it for a particular enthusiast? Like who did you have in your mind when building this?
So, I mean, I've been building bikes the whole of my life, and instead of buying them, I've always bought a frame, because I know I'm going to strip down all the parts I don't like invariably and put new ones on. So I've always done it that way around, which is probably not the cheapest way of doing it either, but it's certainly getting the bike that you want. And I was looking at a bike that I wanted to ride, and in my mind anyway, I thought I want to ride this through the forest, down a canal, to eventually get into London. And maybe that's just because I live in Hertford and I've ridden into London quite a lot down the Lee Valley Canal. But that was the idea. It has to be an all-round bike. And more recently, the 856, which is our kind of launch bike, has become like an adventure e-bike as well. So we're now trying to promote long range riding. And in fact, later this year, in October, in fact, we're doing the NC 500, so 500 miles around Scotland, with a view to really just looking at how long range e-biking works, in terms of, I did the coast to coast earlier this year and it was good, but you can't do it on one battery in a day, or you can't go very far, or you're going to get challenged with really big hills where
Oh
you
yeah.
kind of need a little bit more support. So it's, yeah, we really want to promote that kind of long range touring, to give people the opportunity of having a different type of holiday, which is more about fitness. And I think, I get asked this question with e-bikes all the time as well. It's cheating, isn't it? And in fact, I was in Wales riding this weekend and talking to two lads, and it is, of course, it is cheating. It's got a motor in it, but it kind of also democratizes cycling to an extent. So I'm 54 now. I don't enjoy going up a really steep hill. I'm not even sure I ever did, but I always like going down them the other side. But and Specialized coined it a few years ago when they said the power to ride more trails, and that's kind of what it does. It allows you to stay out for longer and have more fun. And if that's what it does, then if it's cheating, it's cheating. But who cares? I just think that long range e-biking, if you can get people into the heart of Scotland where they wouldn't even venture without a motorcycle, a camper, or a car, then that's got to be a good thing.
I think it is, and you mentioned the coast to coast, and I did the coast to coast earlier this year as well in April, I think it was, and there are some horrible hills, and there was a time where I really wished I just had a bit of help, because I'm not an amazingly fit guy, but I love cycling, and I really like that phrase, democratizing cycling, because transfer that into something like technology generally, and we look at ChatGPT. That's democratized information. People now have that at their hands. And you still get people going, well, it's cheating. It's like, well, no, this is just the new normal. This is a new normal, and technology is creating that gulf now.
Yeah, and I think if you look back and look at the computer and what that did in the 90s, when it desktop publishing came around, it didn't, and it's hard. None of us got a crystal ball in terms of what's coming down the pipes for AI, but sometimes it's petrifying. Sometimes you think, well, actually, if we all use it, then it's just going to mean that we go faster. It's like the mobile phone, for better or for worse. It connected us all, and we could do more things. Some may say that it was better when you had to make firm arrangements and get there on time. Fundamentally, it's changed the world to the better, I think. and also just this video calls. I mean, I've spent a career flying around for a 2 hour meeting, which is not good for the environment, but it costs a fortune, and it takes a week to go to Dubai and sit there, have a couple of meetings, and then fly back. So
Yeah.
video calls, as soon as everyone's got their head around looking at themselves on the screen, it works quite well.
Yeah, technology has definitely allowed us to be a little bit more intentional and a little bit more selective, and we get our time back as well. So, and I think that's something that the bike will do as well. Is like people can look at, doing like the North the 500 in Scotland, or they can look at, doing the coast to coast or any other sort of like large bike trail and go, actually, that's not going to take me 3 days. I could probably get that done in 2, and I get a day back, and I still enjoy it, and I've still managed to do it, and it's an achievement as well. And I think that's quite important. And I'm thinking about myself there as well, actually, and not necessarily others. Right? I'm just putting it into my own perspective, where it's like I would love to be able to do these big things, but I've got young kids. I've got other commitments as well. But I would love to do it if I had an e-bike like that. Then I could literally get it done in like a day and a half, 2 days. So I think that's another thing as well, is that we're giving ourselves more time back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the kind of raison d'etre with Avari has always been to create something out of the ordinary. We set out to do that, and also lightweighting e-bikes. And when we initially designed Avari back in 2018, it was one of the lightest e-bikes. I mean, there are now sub 10 kilo e-bikes, which are more like road bikes, but that was the idea, and that's where the name Avari came from. Is EV and aria, which in Italian is air, and so we wanted to make light e-bikes. But with that as well, we also, and going back to your earlier point, why did we do it? I wanted to create something which was just toe-to-toe, like full of really high-end components and details and specifications. And with that, as I'm sure you know, with the bike industry, often you're creating a frame set, and then everything else comes from someone else. And the opposite is also true. If you bespoke every single thing on the bike, then quite often, if one thing breaks down, you can't take it anywhere to be fixed. So it's finding that balance of things that you can provide, or components that you can make. And we make the handlebars. We make every bolt on the bike is titanium with a black PVD coat, and it's all a T30 Torx. But we did that for a couple of reasons. One is we wanted to kind of, the detail, when you look at the bike, we wanted it to really look consistent throughout. We wanted to own that kind of language as well. But it's also a lightweighting question. It's also just it's visual, but it's also strength as well. So these bolts last a lot longer than an alloy bolt, for example. And building our own dropouts, and we've got a system on top of the bike where we embed the controller into the top tube. I mean, it took us ages to do that, and we worked with a UK company called Rockwood, who are really good carbon fiber manufacturers over here. They work in aerospace and automotive, but the detail required on those elements was phenomenal. Pay quite a lot of money to have it done in the UK, as you can probably imagine. It's labour costs over here are a lot higher than they are in the Far East. Having said that, the Far East are just really, really good at making frames, because they've been doing it for 25 years, and it's not just a cost issue, it's actually who does it better, and they can do it really well in the Far East. So it was all about detail, it was all about the visual impact, it's all about falling in love with the bike. And when you go on a long journey, you do fall in love with your bike, hopefully, if it keeps with you and stays going. But it's we wanted that. We wanted to make special bikes, and they are, they're not cheap. They start at kind of £5,500 and go up to 9,000 and over. Just if you want to spec it even higher than that, you kind of can. Although we've kind of used as many high-end products like a roll-off hub, for example, electronic rear hub, Gates carbon drives, Cell Italia, DT Swiss. We've chosen Magura brakes. We've chosen all the best companies for two reasons. One is it's a high-value purchase. And the other one is we don't want it to just dissolve in your hands 3 weeks after buying it. We want these bikes to be around for years to come.
I think there's something interesting, and I was just thinking about it while you were talking then as well, because you, as a product designer and as a graphic designer and a brand evangelist as well, you're thinking about all these little small components, and I was just thinking then, like, in terms of business in general, do you take that kind of ethic into business generally, like sweating the small stuff, looking at the minute details? Because there are some people who are probably quite big visionaries who don't really like detail. And there are probably some people who sweat over every little thing and really sort of like drive to perfection. Which one are you?
I think the truth is all of them, because, you have to have the macro approach. You have to look at the vision. You have to look at where you're going to be in a few years. And in fact, even down to where the industry is going to be in a few years. If you look at cycling, I mean, the kind of, pardon the pun, but the cycles in cycling, kind of yearly, everything changes. Motors and battery technology and gearboxes and things like that. Every year that I go to Eurobike, there's something new that comes out. So you have to have that vision. You have to look at where the industry's going. But at the end of the day, if that bolt isn't right, or if the dropout isn't as good as it could be, then you're not going to sell a bike. Again, just to go back to that kind of like supplier partnership thing, I worked with some great engineers, Jordan at CERTA, Jordan Jackson. He's been a great ally of our company, and without those guys, and not to sound like some big kind of visionary, but I'll take the problem to Jordan often, and he'll come up with a great solution. Another guy called John Plummer worked with. They're just great guys to have around. And when it comes down to the detail, as long as you have the brief and you understand what you need, then it's sometimes better to look at using someone else who can get to that granular, microscopic kind of detail, because you can't do everything all the time. If you're thinking about the big picture. And the other thing I should say is customer relationships. I dropped a bike off with a customer on Friday. And that's as important as anything. I mean, he doesn't want it sending in the post. It's a £9,000 bike, so it's a hand delivery. Go for a ride, have a chat, make sure everything's okay. Listen, and I'm a big believer in this, is listening to what your customers tell you as well. He had some great ideas, so we chatted about those. In fact, we were talking about it this morning as well. And so drinking in what other people say is important at the same time as actually getting involved and doing the detail and the big picture as well.
I think there's loads to take away from that, and just sort of aware of time as well. But I think if you were to say, like, what in terms of building a company and business growth, what's the one thing that you think that people ignore the most? It's important, but they ignore it. Like, if you could name one thing, what would it be? Like, either something in your own experience or what you've seen others do. Yeah, well, interested to know.
I'll speak from my point of view on this, but at your peril, don't forget to market, because quite often, when you're doing what we've just been discussing there, the macro and the micro, you can forget that you now have to tell everyone about it. And I did a mini MBA this year in marketing, and of course it's everything you already know, but you just have to get out there and start telling people about it and evangelize yourself, because quite often when you've been working until 4:00 in the morning on new details and everything else, you can tire yourself out. So you have to remember, at the end of it all, you're just starting, and marketing is the next big thing. And that's what we're doing this year. We're actively, ramping up our marketing and not just expecting people to find us.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because I'm a marketer, so I'm going to say that that's important. But
maybe I should speak to you then.
Maybe, but it's one of those things, like, you can never do enough marketing. Like, you can never do enough, whether it's pre-product, pre-revenue, even if it's marketing yourself, because essentially you're the entrepreneur, or you're the business leader. Marketing yourself is just as important as marketing the product, because you need to get investors, you need to get partners, you need to be trustworthy, credible, believable, all those things. So you can never do enough marketing. So I'm on board with that. Yeah, marketing is huge, and I don't think it's never the wrong time to market.
And always keep your receipts.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I'm a pain for that.
Yeah.
My CFO hates me.
Yeah.
Craig, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time and for being generous with that and your experience. If people want to go and find Avari or find a little bit more about you or connect with you, where can they find you and your product?
Well, the website is avari.cc. I'm on LinkedIn, so if anyone wants to drop me a message, just Craig McDonald at Avari, and you'll find me, or you can find me on the website. Anyone that wants to get in touch, happy to talk.
Fantastic. Craig, thanks so much again, and really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day.
And you.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.